from the CyberHub bunker and studio. You're tuning in to the CyberHub podcast Tech Corner. And now, join me in welcoming your host and CISO, James Azar.
Hello, ladies and gentlemen, young men and women, geeks, nerds, peeps, and just cybersecurity enthusiasts of all walks of life. Welcome to Veteran November, another awesome episode with another savvy dressing veteran. I have been very amused of how different veterans dress for these podcasts. So I love it. If you're not watching us on YouTube, you should go do so right now. And while you're at it, make sure to subscribe to our podcast and turn on the notification bell every day at 2 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, except the Sabbath, the Jewish day of rest. We will have another episode with some of our brave men and women. You can find all of our content on our website at cyberhubpodcast.com. And now, without further ado, join me in welcoming in our studio today, Mike Anderson.
I appreciate that.
Mike, thanks so much for coming on the podcast. By the way, I love your jacket. It's a very, very savvy jacket. I like it. It stands out. Do you wear that like in different events?
Only special ones, and this being the most and the best. No. Yeah, I always look for an excuse to put on a jacket, so this was a really good one to do that. But yeah, thank you.
My pleasure to give you a good reason, especially in the era of COVID, right? Because I don't think I've had to. I think the last time I wore a suit, I think, typically you wear a suit maybe 3-4 times a month. Mm-hmm. Since COVID broke out, I think I've worn it 3 times total.
Right. Yeah. I'm not the same, but getting a chance to jump in a jacket, a tie. That's a whole different era, right? I'm not going to put on a tie, but jackets and a button-down shirt. Buttons make me look smart, so.
And the glasses too. You got to do that. You got to do the glasses thing, right? You take it off. You put it kind of in your mouth. I love when reporters do that on news stations. I die laughing at them. I'm like, so are you trying to portray that you're thinking while there's a teleprompter? Did the teleprompter tell you to take your glasses off, look deep into the camera, and say, "America, we have a choice to make"? And you're like,
"That's right. Timing is good."
Okay, buddy. All righty. So let's talk a little bit about your service to our nation. You're our Veteran November guest here. So, Mike, tell me a little bit about what branch you served in and how long you were in the service for.
Yeah, I was in the Air Force. I served for a total of 21 years. 14 of that was active duty, and then I transitioned out into the reserves. So I got a taste of both worlds when it comes to the dynamics and the interaction, the workflow of being in, and then also managing the pain points of a reservist as well. So yeah, total 21 years as in the Air Force. Enjoyed every bit of it.
So you essentially went through the whole 21 years of service, retired, and then kind of moved out. What'd you do in the Air Force?
I was an OSI investigator, so Office Special Investigation. Most veterans would know that. The only difference is we didn't have a TV show like NCIS, so I always used this as a reason.
So let's do an NCIS trivia. Who's your favorite NCIS? Like what NCIS is your favorite? Because they've made like LA, New Orleans, right?
That's an easy one, only because I'm Louisiana bred. I was Alaska born. Dad was in the Army. Louisiana bred. It's definitely NCIS New Orleans because.
Really?
Oh yeah, yeah. I'm not an avid watcher of it, but I pick it because of the city. Yeah. Absolutely.
So I like the original NCIS simply because they had an Israeli Mossad agent allegedly in the NCIS.
Okay. Yeah, there you go.
Right, which I found very, very funny because I'm like, NCIS is an Office of Investigations. Why would they ever do anything with the Mossad?
Yeah, no, I agree.
I was like, if it was like a naval investigative officer from the Israeli Navy, I'd believe that.
Yeah,
right. But Mossad.
Mm-hmm. But now now you have us talking about NCIS and yet another reason.
Well,
I should have been an NCIS, right?
Well, here's the thing, though. A lot of people that are non-veterans that are listening to us, right? their idea of the military is NCIS, is some of the stuff that they see on TV. It's a Jarhead, the movie, for example, or American Sniper, right? And I'm like, listen, man, like, not everything you see in these movies is real life.
Right.
Right. You know, let's get that done straight. I love it when people come up to me and be like, so what's it like? And is it like this? And I'm like, no, it's really not like a 2-hour movie of just shit blowing up and getting shot at.
Right. Yeah. No, you're right. There's definitely a difference. Even the recruiting videos, right? You see that versus what the reality's like. So yeah, I completely agree, and for the good and the bad, right?
Right. No, there's positives and negatives to that. So how did you so let's talk about this. How did you end up in cyber? If you were in OSI, meaning you probably had very little to do with IT, network, anything like that, how did you end up in cybersecurity?
Well, most of my career, I focused in on counter intel, a little bit of counterterrorism, and through the course of doing investigative work, defending Air Force programs, and there was a flavor that always seemed to traverse that domain, right, of the physical side with the cyber side, and part of the investigations that I was involved in and the activities we were doing, you get to see how interaction and engagement and both domestically and internationally occur. The interconnectivity of what we do on a daily basis, right, is through the internet, it's through the cyber piece. So those threats that we were looking at naturally traversed that domain as well. So that was my first introduction into it. That being an enabler, for good or bad, and so I got a lot of interest in it, and that kind of gravitated me more and more in that space. And then eventually, when I transitioned out from the active duty side, I had an opportunity to go and work for a company focused in on advanced persistent threats from an APT, as they call it, vantage point. And so that's really where my transition occurred, was because of the background. Yep.
Brilliant. That's a by the way, you are like, if I ever need a wingman, I'm calling you, because that was just the beautiful setup for the next transition, which is, let's talk about your transition from the military to the civilian side. What was that like, and how did you prepare for it?
It was, well, I went into it a little blindly, and the reason being is because I enjoyed everything I was doing, and I didn't get out and go in the reserves because I didn't enjoy the active duty. I desperately did. The opportunity to transition was both from a family personal, reason. I had 2 kids, and they were at an age where coming and going was very challenging, but I still wanted to serve. I still wanted to be a part of what I was doing. And I couldn't make the transition without an opportunity of doing something that also gave me that fulfillment. And so I knew if I could make the transition and balance the two, I'd be okay. And so I found the company that I went to, but part of that, as you noted, preparation was more. I was more concerned about how do I get my TMO done? How do I show up for my first day? Do I wear a snazzy jacket like I'm wearing, or do I wear, a T-shirt? But so that was easy in the sense of being, a veteran and military background. You can attest to this. We're used to planning, but what I didn't understand was the culture was a little bit different, and the experience that I had probably that first 6 months was new, and there is no true guidebooks. I mean, there wasn't a lot of information outside of the typical taps that you do. So the preparation I did was I followed the guidelines of how we transition, but I wish I would have had more mentor capability when I made that first transition out on this is what the real world's like, right? This is the reality. And that varies depending on industry, to job, et cetera. But I think that was one piece that I wasn't able to prepare for. Yeah.
So let's talk a little bit about those first 6 months. We've been, we talk about transitioning quite often, and especially on the Veteran November series, because that's really the most difficult part. You were in for 21 years. So for 21 years, you lived a specific lifestyle. You had structure, order. You knew every 2 to 3 years you might be getting reassigned to a different unit, a different base, somewhere else that you were going to go to. You get to travel a little bit. You get to experience and do things differently. And then in kind of the civilian life, like you said, culture is a little different. Planning's a little different. What was maybe the right way to phrase my question would be, what was the most difficult part of the transition for you as you kind of stepped into the civilian side of things and got your first job and kind of settled in this kind of new routine?
Yeah, I would say it's two sides of the coin for me personally, was getting that trust. When you're in the military, you have a performance, you have a job to do, and a lot of that's built on the trust, the people around you. So the level in which you perform oftentimes can be because of someone who's next to you, coming in behind you, right? Working together. So that performance and that trust is just ingrained in us. And so the transition out was looking for that same thing, looking for that human contact that I could build that relationship with, that trust with, which then, provides me that loyalty and commitment. The same things I had before, I was looking for in my first 6 months, 8 months. And it's not that it doesn't exist, right? Rather, you're not used to the framework. You're not used to the economic engine, because before, the performance that we were doing was we had a mission, we had an objective, we had a goal. But from a top-down perspective, it can be different in corporate America, because the performance there is really rooted around oftentimes business profitability, the numbers that you're making. And so that becomes a challenge to, one, identify that goal, that mission that you're after, and then going towards that goal and that mission with the performance that's rooted in that trust of those that you're working with. So that first 6 months, James, that first probably 6 to 10 really was knowing how that system works versus how it was in the military, and then looking for those connections, that human contact to build that loyalty.
So, one of my favorite questions I always ask people in a job interview is, especially if they're, 10 years removed from being 18, and I'm going to safely assume that both of us are 10 years removed from being 18. Probably you and I are both about 20 years removed from being 18 at this point.
I like the 10 was best. But
right, me too. I mean, I'd trade anything to go back to being 28. But you kind of, what would you tell yourself now, looking back at your discharge, and what would you say, hey, here's one thing I wish someone would have told me that would have probably helped me, and I might have either made a different decision, avoided a mistake that cost me something, or could have helped me kind of avoid some pitfalls along the way. What would you tell your younger self now, after the discharge?
Seek people that are there, right? And again, it doesn't matter what. I went into the financial industry, vertical, right? But it doesn't matter what vertical it is. It doesn't matter what job it is, because culture is everything. That's what we're used to. That was, as I mentioned before. So I would tell my younger self, 8 years removed from now, because I'm going to stay with that 8-10 year number. But I would tell myself then is really to seek out people that are in the corporate America, whether they're 1 year in, 5 years in, and ask them, what's it like, right? I wish I would have asked those questions before, because you can plan as much as you can based on what you know, but discovering the unknowns is you have to reach out, you have to get an understanding of what what the corporate life is like. And again, trust me, I don't mean that in a bad way. It's fantastic. I love it. I love what I do. I love the people I work with. But understanding what pitfalls to be aware of, is really only going to come from conversations. And I wish I would have done that more. But that would be the biggest advice I would get is the veteran groups that are out there, the veteran networking. I mean, they're there for a lot of reasons, but that is a huge one, especially for people that are transitioning out.
Yeah, I want to say that. And for those that are listening or watching, on November 30th, I'm going to be closing out Veteran November with Brian Lozada, Chris Cochran. Brian Lozada's the CISO over at HBO Max. Chris Cochran, Hacker Valley Studio, advanced persistent guy. We're gonna get everyone together, and we're gonna hang out and talk about this for about an hour or so.
That's awesome.
You're invited to come again, Mike, and kind of tune in and hang out with all of us. We'll have a bunch of people there. But the reason I say that is because when you talk about veteran networks, and what I want to do on November 30th is the establishment of a veteran network within Infosec that isn't a distributed, but a centralized veteran network that allows people of all walks of life to engage with us veterans who are, veterans, our brothers and sisters who are still in uniform looking to transition out and need that help, or people who might be looking to enlist and want to talk to veterans about what that's like and kind of, plan their career path. I know when I was, when I enlisted, I had spoken to my recruiter, a really cool guy, Sergeant Jones, Donnell Jones, really great dude. And me and him were talking, and then I went and I started asking other people about planning. So what do you do? How long should I do it for? What are the things I should be paying attention to? What's the stuff I shouldn't be paying attention to? What are the things I can and can't do? Right? And that helped, right? In enlisting and kind of building your plan, building your career, building your life, is understanding the mistakes to avoid, the traps that some people fall into, not to fall into them. Taking MEPS seriously, taking the ASVATs seriously, running and training. It was fascinating. When I lived in Israel, I lived right on the beach. And every morning I would see a group of 16 and 17-year-old kids training on the beach. And they're training because they know they're going to get enlisted, because everyone has to do military in Israel. And so they're getting their PT up, right? They're getting their fitness in line so that when they join the military and they're off to boot camp, they're already in good physical fitness shape. And there was, I remember this period of 4 months. The first time I saw this group, and I knew the instructor, and they always ran in the beach by my house. And I was the kind of guy who would grab his paddleboard or surfboard every morning. And before I started my day, I'd head to the beach and surf for a little while or spend time in the water. Even if it's just, paddleboarding or whatever it is, just to kind of get my blood flowing. Something I desperately miss with the fact that I live in landlocked Georgia at the moment. And so I remember I saw this overweight kid, and this again goes to veteran networks, right? And he was running with the group. He was obviously far behind the group, and this was the classic kind of, I want to call it this overweight young kid that you can tell has probably been overweight since he was 3 years old, right? Has never really been a kid that's going to go play soccer with the rest of the kids or play basketball. He was probably more with reading books and comics and that kind of stuff. But he knew he had to go to the military, and he knew he had to get in shape, and he wanted better for himself. And I saw him the first 2 weeks almost breaking every time. And then his third week, he had kind of a turnaround. And what was great for me to see is those 16 and 17-year-old kids that are traditionally mean were encouraging him. And by the third week, they didn't let him run alone. They were pushing him those last 200 yards. They were pushing him those last 300 yards. And there's a drill that you learn, and I forgot what the name of it in English is. I remember the Hebrew name is called schnitzel, right? Schnitzel, fried chicken or fried beef, depending on where you come from, is you go into the water, you get yourself wet, you then come out, you roll yourself in the sand, kind of like breading a schnitzel, and then you have to run 100 yards and then swim 100 yards in the water, covered in the sand, so the sand's weighing you down.
Right.
And I remember seeing him do his first schnitzel, and the kid could barely make it. And then fast forward, kind of like their last few weeks of training before those guys, end up getting the letter, and they go and they do their ASVATs. That kid was just killing it, man. He'd probably lost like a good 10, 15 pounds, still a bit overweight, but he looked good. He looked healthy. He was confident. And that's something where a lot of veterans, when they leave the service, they're kind of like that kid. Right? You're overweight when it comes to civilian life. You're overweight and unsure of what you're doing because you're used to one way of thinking, and the military really changes you as a person. It defines you. If you were a slacker, you're no longer a slacker. Slackers don't make it in the military, not unless they hit the high, E7, E8s. Then they become slackers again.
Right.
Right. But from the moment you enlist until you hit that level, you can't be a slacker. Right.
Yeah.
I'm sure I'm going to have to do some push-ups, and I'm going to get a bunch of 22 push-up challenges because of that comment, but I don't care. Just pump me up, boys.
Schnitzel time. That's right.
Right. But it's a very interesting thing that you talk about, kind of like the culture, the adoption, kind of looking for that network. We need to create a better one of those as well. I think we need to have more involvement with our local, bases where we are in those, men and women that are leaving the service, and kind of build for them an outside support network. And I know there's a lot of different charities that do that right now, and a lot of different groups, but I'm all for centralizing those efforts so that it doesn't fall on deaf ears. Right? Does that make sense?
No, 100%. I agree with you. I mean, I think the underbelly of what we did in the military and those that are in, and even today, right? It's consistency. Right. And I think having that access to something that's consistent, that could be supporting. I really like what you said, bringing in those that want to enter the veteran, space, the military. Oftentimes I think of veterans groups, and I'm thinking of those that were already, in the support structure, but having it where you could have individuals that are wanting to go in, to serve, to do those things that we all have done. I think that's great. It's great.
Absolutely. So I do apologize for looking away from the screen there for a few moments, folks, but when my Israeli wife texts me and she knows I'm recording, I have to answer. Plus, she's Israeli. She scares me. Let's talk a little bit about, when you looked at kind of that transition, and now, how long have you been a civilian for now?
Well, technically, it all blurs together. About 10 years.
Okay.
Now I know what you're doing, right? You're trying to get all the numbers and adding up. But keep in mind, I was reserved, so that 10-year period, I've just busted it. But I was reserved for some of that period.
I was not doing the math. Okay, I was not, but I know some viewers have, and they'll probably comment below and be like, "Dude, you're that old? You don't look it. Right? Are you kidding me?"
You're too old to be wearing that jacket. Yeah, exactly.
No, you're not. You're never too old to wear that jacket. If you had a bow tie, it would have been perfect.
Remember I said ties.
I don't do ties, right? I don't do ties. I feel like a tie just, I don't like ties. You're kind of in a very interesting side of cyber, right? Because you're more on the business development, relationship building side of cyber, and less kind of on the practitioner side. So what did the military service contribute to the fact that you were able to kind of step from the practitioner side, and what have you taken from the military that's helped you excel in the business development side?
As I transitioned, I'll caveat it with this, as I transitioned in the different industry verticals I worked in, after I got my feet underneath me, right, and was able to understand how the dynamics of things work, one of the most important things I think that helped me was, and I always go back to culture because it still is and is omnipresent, whether we realize it or not, is the underbelly of how any company operates and how the military operates to a large extent, was understanding the relationships and how those pain points as a practitioner, as I was doing the job or as I was leading a team or building a team, is what is it, that they needed? What is it, I should say, what is it that I needed? Why did I need it? And really walking away from that as I moved into more of the business side. The reason why I moved into more of the business side is because, not from a transactional perspective, but again, carrying with me, I want to establish relationships. I want to help. I want to lead with the ability to support what I was doing on the corporate side. And it's extra special, right, when I get to work with a team or a business unit that is made up of veterans. There is that connection that I mentioned before. So for me, it's that piece, carrying that framework with me, but also the ability to move from one problem set to another, or in my case, move from one client or customer or company and really interact with them. I enjoy that, and so I may have professional ADD, if you want to call it that, but I really like moving and taking what I learned and helping someone else, right? I saw this here. This could be applicable in your space. And it really is that swell that I have from the military, that consistency, that persistence. You don't lose it, right? You carry it with you. And so moving from as a practitioner into the business side, I've stayed consistent in that. I may have changed how I interact or engage because everybody's different. And I enjoy that, right? So I learned that in the military, and it's helped me a lot to first establish those relationships, because at the end of the day, that's what it is. It's really about relationships and making those connections.
Yeah, absolutely. That highlights the diversity that's needed in InfoSec. So if you're not a smart computer guy, but you're a great relationship guy, we still need you in InfoSec. Right? Mm-hmm. Like, don't discount that. Don't go sell used cars. Don't go sell at Best Buy. Reach out to any one of our veterans, and I'll volunteer Mike here, and he'll help, and they'll help you, whether you're a he or a she. Kind of get into the idea of understanding cyber and then using your skills to benefit our community as a whole. I know we definitely need more better trained salespeople in InfoSec. As a CISO, let me tell you, man, I'm constantly upgrading my spam filters because of salespeople.
Yep. Yeah, I think it's what you and I both know that we're cut from, right? It's more of the what and the how. It's the why. Yes, it's a Simon Sinek approach, and he's my spirit animal, because it really does come down to that. If I'm not helping, they always say always be closing, and that's a sales thing. I didn't understand what that meant, but now I do. But I believe, always be helping, because the relationships is really what matters the most. No different in the military side. I'm not going to do something, I shouldn't do something from the integrity perspective because it's benefiting me. I should do something because it's benefiting us. It's benefiting the team. It's benefiting the mission and the goal. And so I think when you buy, into that, and you understand that the purity of it, the conversations will unfold naturally, and that's where it really should be. And unfortunately, it's not the case always. And so yeah, I wouldn't blame you. Upgrade your spam filters.
Upgrade your spam filters. As we wrap up, we're almost out of time, and if you and I were chatting too long before we started recording.
Good conversation.
We are guilty. I am guilty of being a chatty Betty. I'm very guilty of that. But I do feel like getting to know people is critical, and spending time together and learning about each other is just as important. It makes this episode better. It makes all episodes better. And it also, at the end of the day, this is a very, very small world, and our path will cross multiple times. And so, those personal relationships are critical. Let's talk. My favorite question of this entire show is the one thing you miss about your service in the military. What is that?
The one thing that I miss, is that what you said?
Yes,
okay.
Sir.
Yeah. It always is the camaraderie, but it really is for me, that It's just hard to explain, you know.
No, it's not hard to explain. It's not. Yeah. It's been everyone's answer. It's been everyone's answer.
Yeah. Well, I mean, good. I'm glad that my honest answer is the exact same thing. It really is. I mean, you still seek it out. It's like I said, the first 6 months, that's what I was seeking, right? It is that. That's what I missed the most, James. Absolutely.
Brilliant. Mike, thank you so much for coming on the podcast. Thank you for your service. Thank you for sharing with us. And I'm sure you're available for people that are transitioning, looking to transition or get an InfoSec. They can reach out and get a little bit of help from you and guidance if they need it.
Absolutely. Even if they're in CIS, I'm going to help them. But yeah, thanks for having me on as well. And thank you for your service as well. Appreciate it.
My pleasure. Thank you, folks. Another Veteran November in the books. Veteran November is a hashtag that I hope in the next several years will only grow to highlight our veterans in our nation, and I hope that it'll spread outside of InfoSec and into other realms and worlds of highlighting how our veterans are contributing and adding to each and every single industry in our nation, and that beyond their service to our nation, they're also a powerful force in our economy. They're entrepreneurs, they're business leaders, and they're game changers in all aspects of it. And so that's I hope that that's what people get out of this series. That's it for us here. We'll have more episodes each and every single day, Sunday through Friday. Take Saturday off. Turn off your phone. Enjoy some time with your family and friends. Go for a hike, fishing, hunting. I don't know, but just do something with yourself and get off your tail and the computer. We'll be back with until then. My name is James Azar. Mike Anderson, who was my guest today. Thank you very much. Stay healthy and stay cyber safe, America.
Make sure to subscribe to our podcast and share it with your friends and colleagues. And get all the latest information at cyberhubpodcast.com.